I am so happy to be able to have 2 horror movies this week coming out at the movie theaters. Like, that never happens at the movie theaters. So I'm super excited to talk about this brand new movie, and if you are too, then let's get on to the review. Welcome back, film fans. This is Let's Be Bro Brad. Today on the channel, I want to talk about the brand new supernatural horror film called Antlers. Antlers is based off the short story called The Quiet Day, is written and directed by Scott Cooper. The film stars Keri Russell, Jesse Plemons, and Jeremy T. Thomas. This film is about a school teacher and her police officer brother in a small Oregon town where they become convinced one of her students is harboring a supernatural creature. Antlers is one of those movies that's been on my radar for quite some time now, considering that this is one of those 2020 movies that was supposed to be released but end up being pushed to 2021 because of the pandemic. I was also excited to check out this movie just because of this poster alone that looks really creepy and interesting, and being a small indie horror film is something that I'm always quite interested in and will always give the benefit of doubt of trying to check out in a movie theater if possible. And then you add the cherry on top with producer Guillermo del Toro being a part of this film, which made me even more excited considering that every movie he's been able to produce, whether it is bad or good, has had some great horror and creature designs throughout his movies, and I was instantly more excited to check this movie out. So after being able to see an early screener for this movie last night, I have to say that Antlers is a good, solid movie that I did enjoy, but I did find this movie quite disappointing considering that this could have been such a great horror film if it just had more to it. This movie is exactly what you think it's going to be. It has a very simple plot, very simple structure, and the horror in this movie is pretty good. But unfortunately, there are so many wasted opportunities that this movie could have taken, especially with a story that does feel fresh. But unfortunately, it's bogged down by just being a very uninteresting and sometimes boring movie at times. So let's just dive right into my positives first, and let's start with the horror. When you have producer Guillermo del Toro working on your film, the horror in the movie is probably going to be somewhat competent, and in this case, I thought it was quite effective, and there was a ton of great tension-filled scenes that I was sitting on the edge of my seat. The last 25 to 30 minutes of this movie are quite great, and it definitely gives you what you wanted for this kind of movie, and I think it was able to deliver, being able to be very terrifying and unnerving. Another great aspect with the horror is the creature itself. The creature in this movie is quite interesting and really terrifying to look at, and that also is due to the great visual effects this movie has. I found all the visual effects in this movie to be quite good considering that they were able to combine the practical and CGI elements in this movie that I could not tell which was which. I found the visual effects to be more impressive considering this is a low budget indie horror film that doesn't have all the money in the world to be able to spend making this movie look so clean and polished. My next positive with this movie is the performances. Keri Russell and Jeremy T. Thomas were the best standouts in this movie, and I do think that when they were on the screen together, which is a good portion of this movie, that is when the movie was at its best because I think the chemistry between them felt so realistic and natural, from this teacher to her student. Jesse Plemons is also in this movie as well, as he is one of my favorite newcomers in the past few years, and I thought he did a pretty solid job in this movie. Even though he isn't the lead role of the film, I still think he was able to get the job done as a police officer brother. I found that the other technical aspects in this movie, like the cinematography, directing, and editing, were quite solid, and that at times it felt very mediocre and a little bit bland and uninteresting, but I think it was solid and serviceable for this movie. Now, let's dive into my many negatives that I do have with this movie, that some of them I've already talked about already, but not in depth as I wanted to, and we're gonna start with the story. This is a movie you have seen countless times over, with just having different characters, a different setting, and just being a little bit different, but the story structure in itself is very familiar, especially to horror fans, and I do think that this is a very disappointing aspect because there are some new, fresh, and interesting ideas with this movie, but because this movie feels very predictable and shows us everything in the first 10 minutes, I didn't find that this movie had any fat that this movie could have taken off, but I did find that there was a couple of plot holes in this movie that were never addressed by the end of the film. Another negative I have with this movie is the slow pacing. Because we know everything that's happening in the first 10 minutes of the movie, which should have been structured so much differently, I just felt like I was so bored and uninterested with the rest of the movie because it's just so slow in general, and this just didn't work for me. Overall, guys, Antlers is a good, solid horror film that I can give a positive review for, and it does have some great horror aspects to this movie, especially in the last 25 to 30 minutes of the movie. Unfortunately, this movie does feel like it's going beat for beat for something we have seen before, and it just felt like it had so much wasted opportunity. I'm giving Antlers a strong 6 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I want to know down below in the comments section, what are your go-to Halloween movies you watched during the month of October? I can't wait to hear about those. But before you check out this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to, and ring that notification bell so I can see you all in the following video.